Well, there's no doubt the Matildas have quickly become the country's favourite footy team. So why can't the majority of players in women's football earn enough to make a living?
Our trailblazing Tillies reaching new heights on the world stage while breaking audience records and generating billions for the country. Before that, they were the first women's team in the world to get an equal pay deal with their male counterparts, the Socceroos.
It's hard to not be sentimental about today because it's a massive moment for football.
But in the women's A-League, where Tilly talent is brewed, players are struggling to support themselves.
No one can really identify as a full-time footballer. It's common to have a 50 to 60-hour work week. Some days I've worked from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m.
And it's a problem specific to the women's league.
Are we investing adequately and fairly and equally into our women's professional game as we are in our male?
According to the stats, it doesn't appear so. 60% of A-League women's players have a job outside the game, compared to just 15% of the men. Women's contracts cover them for just 35 weeks of the year. The men are covered year-round. And while minimum pay for female players is $25,000, men get at least $45,000. But the biggest disparity comes in club benefits, a payment used to develop players. FIFA provides around $200 million to the men's league, while the women get about $11 million.
We're getting up at stupid hours to train, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to get sufficient rest and be able to recover, ready to put in your best performance at training the next day. So I think the majority of the girls will be at burnout.
Advocates for the women's game are calling time on the excuses.
What we typically hear, not as many people turn up to watch, and there's not as much sponsorship. But hang on, it was felt by the majority male-run professional sports around the country for at least the last 50 years that they need to invest in order to build, in order to grow.
They say the answer lies in getting the women's players on full-time professional contracts.
When I started, it was semi-professional. The rise of the sport is closely tied to that step towards professionalism.
When I was 24, I was forced to go overseas to make a full-time career, and everyone will be forced to do the same. Your good players will just leave. It's simple as that.
The leagues in England and the US have proved putting players on full-time pro contracts can pay off quickly.
They put up revenue first, and then their costs outweigh the revenue in that year. But we're seeing that the initial investment put in is returned in the next year, and the game is growing through that investment.
The Australian Professional League aims to get the women to full-time professionalism by 2030. That plan far too slow for current players.
Really made my blood boil a little bit, to be honest, and I think we can strive to have action immediately. I think we know that there's an appetite out there for women's football.
Every Australian wants the Matildas to do well. Am I right? Of course. We all want them to be able to win medals and eventually win a World Cup. Well, you have to invest in your women's game here.
Everyone cries about money, we all know that, but it's not a cost problem, it's a revenue problem. So we need to find ways to really back it in and turn this game professional for the girls.
The argument has always been when these kind of games will, get bums on seats and advertisers on board, then we can start to pay women appropriately. But you see with the Matildas what can be and what kind of passion there is and the support for the game. And it surely now is the time when you can see that to invest and to put the money into this game, give these women a chance to really, focus on the sport 100%. The idea that you've got to go and
get a job for 3 months, pulling beers or working at a supermarket.
Yeah, how can the league ever be where you want it to be if the players aren't 100% dedicated to that and able to do that?
Is there any kind of wonder our Australian girls as well go overseas to play for the big clubs over there where they actually treat it like a professional sport?
Yes.
If you build it, they will come. 11.5 million eyeballs on the Matildas. That's what we're capable of if we actually take women's football seriously.
I think the shame of it is, and we saw this with netball, even in circumstances where ours are the best in the world, there's not, a big high-profile men's game. I mean, there is some men's netball, but it doesn't have the same status, I suppose. They still have to fight to get the pay deal. So, that isn't as it should be, but I think we can see there is a fight brewing.